Hi everyone, it's Librarian Colleen, and today I'm going to show you how we make the yarn word craft. So first things first, you'll have your supplies. All of you are going to get your kit, which will have a bunch of pipe cleaners for you to use to spell out your word, and then you will have a bunch of pre-cut strands of yarn that is all set up and ready to go for you. So once you decide what word you're going to write, you can start to lay out your pipe cleaners. I ended up spelling out hello, just a simple, nice hi, and so because I only had a few pipe cleaners, I'm cutting some of them in half just to make it one, smaller and easier to wrap, and also because I didn't have enough to do one pipe cleaner for each letter, but that's totally fine because it's very easy to cut these. So as you can see that I'm doing here, I'm just twisting the one pipe cleaner around the other pipe cleaner to form the H of my hello. And really, it's very easy to do. They'll just twist right around the other one, and I actually had a lot of extra pipe cleaner, and so you could definitely cut that and make it even shorter. And don't worry if the general shape is not perfect right now, because we're going to be fiddling with it a lot as we go through. So as you can see, I'm now forming the E, and you really just want to do your best to get like a good base shape of the letter, but again, don't worry about if it's perfect. Don't worry if you have a lot of extra pipe cleaner at the end. You can adjust all of these things as you go. So here again, you can see that I have a lot of excess at the end of the letter, so I'm just trimming it with a scissor. So now you'll see that I'm making the L's, and like I said, don't worry too much if the shape is not perfect, because you're going to end up rewrapping them and, changing the shape a little as you go. And as you can see here, they're pretty big and far apart from the E, so I do end up changing them as I go. So don't worry if you don't love the shape the first time. You could kind of use the initial layout as a trial run. Okay, so now as you can see, I've got the general shape and layout of the word that I'm doing, and I'm gonna unravel my first bit of yarn. You'll have a bunch of these little spools of yarn all separated by color, and I made sure that you guys have a ton of extra, so if you want to change the color like midway through a letter, or if you wanted to go back over certain things with more colors, you have a ton of options for while you're doing it. So to start, I'm just tying a knot on the end of the H, not the complete end, and then just trimming that little tail part. getting it out of the way, but then there's a little bit extra, and I'm just going to wrap around that tiny little bit of extra, and it'll be completely covered up, and then you won't even see it. And then from there, you're really just carefully wrapping the yarn around the pipe cleaner. You could leave parts of the pipe cleaner exposed if you want the color to come out. I wanted to make it as tight as possible so that you didn't really see the yellow, and that's why I'm going nice and slow, just wrapping it really tight. And then, you know, for the sake of you guys not watching me wrap in slow motion, I just speed it up here. And as you can see, I'm just going nice and slow, keeping the yarn very tight around the letter. Once I got to the corner where I had attached one pipe cleaner to the other, I just made sure to go in with a little bit extra care and go over it. And as I go, you can see that there are some gaps in the color, but then I go over it again, which you'll have plenty of yarn to do, and that really removes any of the gaps in the color. So once you get to the end, you're just going to tie another simple knot like you did at the beginning, and again you'll have that tail piece. You could leave that out for now just to make it easier to see where you start one color and end the other, and then you could always go back and trim those later. You can even just tape a little bit on the back so that you can't see it and you know that it stays firm in place. But same thing with the next color, I'm just tying a nice tight knot, tucking the tail around the pipe cleaner, and then I'm just going to wrap around that tail again with my new yarn, and just nice and slow. And as you could see, the word is kind of, you know, getting bent up a little bit and losing its shape, but that's totally fine, and that's why I told you guys not to worry too much about the shape in the beginning, because you can always go back and reshape it later. So now I'm starting my third color on my first L, and as you can see, I just unraveled the L completely so that I was working in a nice straight line as I wrapped, and it made it much easier. And that was the other great thing about doing the letters in like a cursive style, so that it was like very easy to unwrap and then rewrap them. But you could even leave all the pipe cleaners flat, wrap them individually with yarn, and then spell out the letter. That's another option. I kind of just found it was easier for me to do it this way and, you know, visualize how much yarn and color I needed for each word, but you could definitely just wrap all the pipe cleaners and then spell out the word after the fact. So now that my first letter L is completely wrapped, I'm just flipping it back over and reshaping it to be that initial cursive look that I had. And once the yarn is on it, it does stay a lot stiffer, which makes it even easier to hold its shape once you're done. So as I had mentioned earlier, one option is just to completely unravel your pipe cleaners and wrap them as if they're a straight line all by themselves, and that's what I ended up doing with my letter O. It's a little bit curved because I had it in that shape for so long, but I decided to just unwrap it and do this as if it was just a single pipe cleaner in a straight line, and it definitely was easy as well, so it's really whatever your preference is as you're doing it. Another thing that I mentioned earlier, you will have plenty of yarn to go over the letters twice, maybe even 3 times in some cases. So because I went through this one quite quickly, there was a ton of gaps. But when I went over it a second time with the remainder of the yarn, it filled in really nicely and it made the color like much bolder and brighter, and I really liked how it turned out. So finally, as you can see here, I'm just reattaching my O, and then I will have my full hello spelled out. In here, I'm just kind of making sure that the parts where the letters are connecting are tight and secure, and just adding a little bit of extra yarn. And then I just decided to cut a little bit off the end of the O. It's a little harder to cut once you have all the yarn on it, but it's still definitely doable. The pipe cleaners are not thick at all. So now I just went ahead and took some extra yarn I had and just tied it onto the 2 ends of the word so that it would be like a nice little sign. And because I went with hello, I just thought this would be a cute idea to hang up on a door or something. This is totally optional, but you should have a ton of extra yarn if this is something that you wanted to do. And finally, guys, that is my finished craft. I hope you enjoyed. Have a good day.